Wartime Engines. Based on the original volume James and the Big City Engines by Joe. Wartime Engines adaptation by Simon and Christopher. Dear friends, a short while ago, one of the Fat Controller's engines had made a visit to the National Railway Museum to participate in a war memorial event. This engine was none other than James. We decided to visit James and ask how his stay had been. From what he told us, it sounded as if he had a better time than he imagined, even if he wasn't as brave as he claimed to be. Off to York. James, Henry and Gordon were at the big station early one morning. The Fat Controller had summoned them together with important news.
A friend of mine has invited me to York to take part in a war memorial service, and he has requested I bring one of my engines with me.
A war memorial? Said James. What's that, sir? The Fat Controller coughed into his handkerchief before explaining. The three engines listened in silence as he told them the events of the Second World War and how it had affected York, its station in particular. When he had finished, Gordon was speechless. Henry had turned an ill shade of white, and James squirmed in discomfort.
I agree it was difficult to hear, the Fat Controller continued. But you needn't worry. All those times are in the past. From what I hear, several famous engines will be there who experienced the whole thing from beginning to end. There will be one engine representing each region, and we have been invited to send one of our engines to join them. I shall decide which of you will go at the end of the week.
And as soon as he left, the big engines looked at one another in silence. Gordon spoke up.
Well, it sounds like quite an honour.
I agree, Henry said. It sounds like a grand ceremony. It's little wonder why they would want to remember it.
In which case, a prestigious ceremony requires a prestigious engine,
Gordon said grandly.
I was, after all, Sodor's royal engine. I'm perfect for the task.
Rubbish, said James crossly. Any of us could do it, but it's not about whatever you just said. It's about duty.
Duty it may be, sniffed Henry, but the Fat Controller will pick the most important engine. Me.
James snorted loudly as they trundled away to fetch their trains. The days passed. The three engines were still a little uneasy, but they all worked hard and kept their trains to time. However, after a week of observing, the Fat Controller decided to choose Henry. James and Gordon pretended not to mind, but they were very jealous. The sun shone high over the big station as visitors gathered to see Henry off. The Fat Controller waited on the platform, along with his family and close friends. Henry was pleased to receive quite a reception, and forgot to be frightened as he backed on to the special train. The guard's whistle sounded, and Henry quickly set the train into motion. He saw James in a nearby siding and smirked smugly.
I've showed you, he chortled as he disappeared into the distance.
James snorted and carried on with his shunting. Henry was making perfect progress. He rolled smoothly along the main line and was soon approaching the bridge, which linked Sodor with the mainland. He was looking forward to his grand welcome. Then it happened. Without warning, there was an almighty whoosh from overhead. Henry let off steam, whistling in fright, as several tornado aircraft shot across the sky and screamed into the distance. The passengers leaned out of the carriage windows and waved. But Henry's reaction was completely the opposite.
Ooh!
He shrieked.
We're under attack! We're under attack!
The brakes came on with a scream, and the train jerked to a stop, several yards short of the bridge. The Fat Controller climbed down and stormed to the front of the train.
Is something the matter, driver?
He asked impatiently. I don't know, sir. He just stopped dead. The Fat Controller went to speak to the big engine, but was surprised to find Henry had his eyes shut, his lip trembling furiously.
Henry, what is the meaning of this behavior? Why have you stopped?
We're under attack,
Henry whispered feebly. The Fat Controller hung his head.
Oh, Henry, didn't you know? Those tornado aircraft are harmless. They were on loan from Sodor to take part in the memorial event. They won't hurt you.
But Henry wasn't convinced. Nothing anyone could say or do would make him move another inch. The firemen protected the train with detonators, then hurried back to the signal box. It was late afternoon. James was resting at Vickerstown, still feeling bad-tempered.
What's Henry got that I haven't? The Fat Controller must have made a mistake to have him go instead of me.
He was about to find himself correct when the station master came towards them. He explained about Henry's breakdown and ordered James to rescue him at once. James laughed all the way to the bridge.
This is a fine turn-off for the books,
he guffawed. James came up behind the train and gave it a light jolt. Henry flinched, but didn't open his eyes. His driver managed to loosen the brakes to allow James to pull the train back to the station.
Get moving, you!
James barked viciously. Henry didn't help at all. James struggled on until they arrived safely back at Vickerstown. As the guard went to pacify the passengers, James pushed Henry onto a siding out of the way.
You poor old thing, he said cheekily. Don't worry, you'll be safe here.
Even so, James was concerned. Who was going to pull the special train now with Henry out of action? Several minutes later, the Fat Controller strolled towards them, followed by the guard.
Henry, I am most displeased with this behaviour. This will not bode well with my arrangements.
Henry squirmed and said nothing.
As for you, James, thank you for helping us out. My colleagues and I have made several changes to our proposals, and we have decided that you deserve to take us to York after your hard work today.
Oh, sir, thank you! James was thrilled. If we set out now, added the guard, we'll make it to York by midnight. Do you think you can do it?
James smiled proudly. Don't worry, sir. I can and I will.
And so it was. As the passengers settled down in the sleeping saloons, James the Red Engine glided smoothly out of the yard and continued throughout the night until he saw the glittering lights of a large city station just ahead of him. James smiled and looked around him. Sure enough, he had arrived at York.